This morning, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Commissioner John Schroer, whose bio is in your packet. I think we all know John. He's a guy that shoots straight, tells the truth. And so, John, welcome this morning.
Am I supposed to hold this up so we know what that is? Is that the... So y'all know where you are. Sometimes I need to know where I am. Good morning, everybody. Those of you who know me will be really happy to know that I'm in the process of losing my voice, so I may only could give you 5 minutes, because otherwise I've got about a 45-minute speech to give. And I told Michael that I'd start my watch, my clock, up so I'd know how long I've talked. Ken, thank you very much. Ken and I have worked very closely together. In fact, when he became an alderman in the city of Franklin, one of the first things that Ken did was have a transportation summit, and he started that out. And little did he know that the mayor was going to be the commissioner of transportation. Little did the mayor know that he was going to be the commissioner of transportation, and little does the mayor know about transportation. But I'm glad to be here. Before I get started, and I've already in 30 seconds, so I have to be really quick here. I want to introduce some of our TDOT staff who helped me look as good as I possibly can, which is really difficult. Lindsay Botts, who is my chief of staff. Tokes Omashakin, who is just all about TDOT and all about transportation, and he's our multimodal. He's an assistant commissioner for us and handles planning and environment stuff. Eliza Joffrin, who's head of our multimodal area. Tanisha Hall, planning. I got a phone call. Can you believe that? Do not answer that. Angie Midget, who works with our MPOs, and let's see, Ralph, you're back there, my friend. You left him off. So anyway, we're glad to be here, and want to talk a little bit about. I heard we're going to have state transportation policies. I'm not sure I can do that, but I can talk a little bit about what we're dealing with today in transportation real quickly. And as we all know, probably one of our biggest issues has to do with revenue. And those of you that are working with the states know that we have issues. The mayors that are here, people that work with the cities and communities are all having revenue issues. And it's interesting that TDOT is the only department in the state this year that revenues went down. And our budgets were less this year than they were last year. Our budget was $100 million less this year than it was last year. And the question has to do with why. And it's really clear what's going on in the transportation department. And those of you also know me know that I don't do much with PowerPoints, but I have a PowerPoint presentation. And if Skipper can pull it up, this is my PowerPoint presentation. It's the only one I've ever given in my whole life, and so I'm really proud of this. And it won't stay up there very long. But it's really simple. It talks a little bit about revenues per VMT. And it really is a simple explanation as to what's going on in the United States and in Tennessee. And it just shows you graphically that where we are today. Okay, you can take the PowerPoint on. Because I want you all looking at me, not the screen. I'm not quite as pretty, but that might distract you. But it's simple. It just shows to you that today, because of what's going on in our country, that the dollars that we're getting per VMT, vehicle miles per hour, is going down. Well, why are they going down? Well, they're going down because our cars are burning less energy. Our cars are burning less gas. We have cars that don't burn any gas at all. And so for the mileage that's going, 10 years ago, TDOT had all sorts of money in the world. Why? Because cars were getting 10 or 12 miles a gallon. People were driving a lot of miles, and we were getting our share of those taxes. And we get it per gallon. We don't get it per cost of gas, and that's federal and state. So what happens, and if you look at that trend line means that as we go forward in this country today, for our vehicle miles traveled, we were receiving less and less and less dollars per vehicle miles traveled, which means that we have less money to do what we're going to do with on transportation. And at the same time, our costs are going up significantly. Those of you who are in the industry, those of you who run cities know that the cost to build roads, the cost of asphalt, cost of employees are all going up, and they're going to go up as we run out of this recession, which we hopefully are, that those costs are going to go up. They're going to continue to go up because as we grow, inflation will go as well, which means our dollars that we have, the current dollars we have, are going to go less far than they've gone before, which means we have issues in how we fund transportation. And if we continue on that trend line, at some point in time, we're going to be in a desperate situation, not only in the state, but in our national government. We are at a crossroads today, in my mind, on how we fund transportation. I will tell you that I have been adamant about talking about that, and I have recently been appointed as chair of the Finance and Administration Committee of AASHTO. And one of my goals in that chairmanship position is to look at how we fund transportation across this country. We cannot continue to fund transportation based upon dollars per gallon, because if that happens, we're going to go broke, our infrastructure is going to collapse, and we're going to fall behind China and India and all these growing countries, because they're putting billions and billions and billions of dollars into transportation, hundreds of billions of dollars. What we're doing, we're putting less and less dollars into transportation, both federally and statewide, because we're getting less dollars to do that. It is a national crisis. And I will tell you that, in fact, the governor mentioned it the other day, we are looking at how we do it in Tennessee. Nothing's on the drawing board. We're having lots of conversation, but we really need to address it nationally. And this year, with the implementation of MAP 21, it was really not addressed. Nothing was talked about. It's kind of one of those things, it's that big giant elephant in the corner that no one wants to talk about. And I think that we need a grassroots effort to make sure that those people in Washington understand that sooner or later we are in trouble, if not sooner. I sat in a meeting with the president of General Motors, or actually the senior vice president of General Motors, about a year and a half ago, and that he made this scary statement. He said, it is General Motors' long-term goal to make sure that every vehicle that comes out of that company does not run on fossil fuels. Not a single vehicle could run on fossil fuels. Well, if we continue in that trend, what that means when that happens, that we have no money to handle transportation. So it's an issue that we have to address. But in the meantime, what are we doing? Well, we have to figure out how to do better with the money that we have. And one of the things that we're doing in TDOT is we are trying to make smarter decisions about how we spend our dollars. And back, as I said earlier, in 2000, late 1990s, TDOT had lots of money. We built lots of projects. And a legislator would call TDOT, they'd call the commissioner, they'd call Paul Deggs, they'd call whoever was here and say, I want to do a study about a bypass coming from the interstate around my city because we need a bypass. And what TDOT used to do, and we've tried to change that model, we used to let people come to us and tell us what their solution to their problem is. And these communities said, we need a bypass, we need a 4-lane, we need whatever it is, and we'd let them tell us what their solution is. So we'd start a study. And we would work very, very hard on the study, and we would analyze, and next thing you know, the study would become a project would start environmental would go to planning, and the next thing you know, there would be this giant bypass. Classic example is in Dixon, Tennessee. Not too long ago, I sat in a meeting, we were finishing the environmental document, and I looked up and this was a project that had been on our books since 1998, bypass to Dixon. And you all need to listen about this. The city of Dixon came to us and said, we need a bypass. So we said, okay, you need a bypass. So we started this study. It took us 14 years to come up with a good solution. So that in 1998 we started, they gave us $300,000. We did some preliminary studies. We went into environmental issue. There were 3 or 4 alternate routes that we looked at, had some environmental opportunities around the way. And so finally, at the end of the day, about 4 or 5 months ago, they came to me with 2 solutions. One was a bypass, about $46 million to build a full bypass. That was one solution. Second solution was to do work on the existing road, Highway 46, going through Dixon, that we could work on interchanges, We could work on signalization. We could coordinate the signalization, computerize it, and we could reach almost 90% effectiveness of the bypass if we did that work on the existing road. And that was great. And you know what the cost of that was? That was $1.6 million. So a bypass of 46, work on the existing right-of-way, or existing road, $1.6 million. That's a pretty easy, and get 90% effectiveness. That's a pretty easy decision for an old commissioner to make. And what really, and I won't say the word, made me mad, made me worse than mad, but I won't say that here, is that it took us 14 years to come to that decision. We could have done that in 1999 at a cost, instead of $1.6 million, at probably $800,000, and the citizens of Dixon could have had an effective tool for 14 years while TDOT was trying to figure out what the hell to do. And not only that, this is the scary part for all of you that pay taxes in Tennessee, is it cost TDOT $6 million to get that answer. $6 million to get a $1.6 million solution. And I said, stop. We can never do this again. And so we have developed what we call right sizing. We have taken every project, every major project, and we've broken it down, and we're looking at every single one of them to see what can we do. Do we have to do what we're trying to do? And so our new mantra from people who come to us, don't tell us what your solution is, tell us what your problem is, and TDOT will find the solution. We were back asked doing it. We would let the city of Dixon, city of Franklin, somebody tell us what their problem is, and we would, or what their solution is, and that's what we would do. We're changing that. So we are doing what's called right sizing. The first thing that we're doing is we're not building a Ferrari. That's not the first thing. We're not going to give cities everything that they want. What we're going to do internally is we're going to say, what's the problem? Is the problem congestion? Is the problem safety? Is the problem multimodal transportation? What is the problem? And let us figure out the way to solve that problem. And what we found a lot is that the solution is not building a bypass. The solution may be doing something on existing alignment. First of all, it's a whole lot cheaper. Second of all, we have very little environmental concerns because we're usually on existing right-of-way, so it makes things a whole lot quicker and easier and better for the environment to do something on existing alignment. And it's faster. And so we can get effectiveness to the community in a year or in 18 months. If we can do a categorical exclusion from an environmental process, we can start in no time. If we have to do a full environmental process, it could take 6 or 8 or 10 years. So the citizens of all these communities get solutions quicker, and it makes a difference. And those are the things that we're doing. And we're traveling around the state to look and talk to communities. And I would say, those of you that are in, how many of you all had an opportunity to ride, have ridden on our buses or heard about our tours that we're doing across the states? Raise your hand so I got to get a look at that. You know, what we're trying to do is we're trying to develop partnerships with our local communities. We are out and about, and we're listening, and we're talking. We want them to know what we're trying to do, and we want them to know about right sizing, that a bypass may not be the right thing. And when there is a bypass, the one thing that we're also talking to them about is good planning. And that's really never been talked about. I can tell you that right now there are several places that we are being asked to build a bypass to the bypass to the bypass. It's true. Greenville, Tennessee, as an example, is a perfect example of that. And why is that? Because the citizens of the community or the county or the city are doing a horrible job in planning. Planning has to be an integral part of transportation, and cities across the state don't do a good job at that. What they do is, you know, we've got a road running through the center of town, and Walmart and Costco and Sam's were there. They build a bypass. Walmart, Costco, and Sam's leave the center of town. They go to the bypass. Well, the bypass gets so crowded because all those things go there, and the communities love it because they've got all these sales tax dollars and all these property tax dollars, and everything's great. But then the next thing you know, the bypass has congestion issues and safety issues, so they need a new bypass. And so we build a new bypass, and you know, it just starts. And it really does not create any economic benefit to the city at all. They think that it does, but it doesn't, because we have empty real estate. We are not creating sales taxes from empty buildings. We're just moving the sales tax. It doesn't really even create any new jobs. It just moves the jobs from the main road to the bypass. Well, that's not an economic advantage to a community. It doesn't help the state create new jobs. And so we are really talking and working. But what we've also done with really the start of Tokes and Tanisha is that we've started a new division in TDOT, and it's called OCT, the Office of Community Transportation. And we are in the process of hiring people, planners, to go into the communities. They'll be in our regions. We have 4 regions, and some of them will be in our district offices. And they will work with local communities to talk about transportation and planning. We will be involved with them on the front end. We won't tell them what to do, but what we want to make sure is that there's good planning going on in conjunction with the spending of state tax dollars on transportation, because we can't afford to continue to build a bypass to the bypass to the bypass. We don't have those kind of dollars. And as long as our economic trends are going the way they're going, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And so we are trying very desperately to make sure that we work with communities to make sure that that happens. I cannot tell you how many times we've been called in the last 2 years I've been in this department from county people and saying, we've got an issue with your road. The traffic is horrible. And I found out that the reason why we have a problem with the road, and they do, is they built a big giant school in the middle of nowhere because their land was free at the worst possible location, and now it's our problem to fix their traffic problem. Well, no, that's not our problem. You know, it takes good planning to make sure that doesn't happen. That school should have been someplace else. It shouldn't have been in the middle of nowhere. It should have been where it should have gone. And we are going to work with those schools and with the counties and with the cities to give them ideas about how they can do planning and how they can good strategies to make sure that they work in conjunction with our transportation department, because we can't continue to do what we're doing. We won't be able to fix it. And I'll wrap this up quickly by talking a little bit about mass transit. Mass transit is another arm of that, and I will say TDOT has traditionally not been involved much in mass transit. I have been involved with the RTA here. I was the treasurer. I worked closely with Michael Skipper and the people in MTA to understand a lot about what's going on. We have dabbled in mass transit locally. I will tell you, Carl Dean and in his starting of the Mayor's Caucus has done a great job in talking about mass transit. It's one of the things that we have to look at locally. We cannot continue to build more capacity because it's too daggone expensive to do that. Right away, I've got a project not really related, but I got a project in Memphis that's about 4 miles long. The right-of-way is going to cost $500 million, just the right-of-way. And as our real estate gets less and less available, and as we expand roads and we plan, and whether you like it or not, as we plan buildings closer and we put parking behind buildings, we have less capacity for right-of-way acquisitions because it's too expensive to do that. And so we're going to have to look at other ways to do it. And I think transit is one of the ways that we're doing. That's a big part of the MPO 2035 plan, and it's something that we're going to have to look at. I have talked to Mayor Dean several times about his east-west corridor and about how TDOT may be supportive of some of that. It's the only way that we can move forward with the kind of dollars that we can do. We've got to spend dollars more effectively. We've got to affect and create an opportunity for other ways and other modes of transportation. That's not just rapid transit. That's not just, it's Tokes, bicycling and walking and walkable communities. In Franklin, we were one of the first cities to have a walkable community and have a complete streets program in our planning department. We're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to think out of the box. We have less dollars to spend every day. My goal at TDOT is to make sure that we spend every dollar as effective as we can. That's my commitment to you and to Governor Haslam. It's part of our top to bottom program. We're trying to save our dollars because every dollar that we save in TDOT goes into road projects. And I'm going to conclude real quickly to say something that you should be very proud of your State Department of Transportation. We are one of only 5 states in the nation that has no transportation debt. Think of that, one of only 5 states. Now, that creates an issue for us because we have to manage cash flow a lot because we only build when we have cash. And so that makes a difference on how we do things. But every dollar that we get that doesn't go to administration goes to roads. None of it goes to debt service. That makes a difference. And we will be much better because of one of the reasons why the state did not get downgraded in their credit rating last year was because the transportation department had no debt. Makes a difference. We will continue that process. We will continue to be conservative in our values as we develop and as we finance these roads and what we do. And we're going to run this department like a business. I fight about it every day. We are creating an entrepreneurial spirit there, and it's going to work. And so with that, I'm going to conclude.